Hello, this is Renee Manfre with What's Your Passion podcast, and I have my good friend Ed Colomb on today. And Ed and I have a lot of different things we want to share on today's show, talking about what most people don't talk about and or don't realize. And between Ed's story and personal history, and also some of my history, and also family members who have lost to addictions, struggles of depression, loneliness, all these different things that we all go through. But I think a lot of us don't really talk about it. And sometimes we don't, it doesn't really come to fruition until a family member or really somebody close to us gets affected. And that's when you start really understanding more of the process of the struggles, because you're dealing with the communication. It's just like a death. Until you really lose somebody, you don't really know what happens. That those hours that go by, and all of a sudden you're planning for a funeral and things of that nature. So, Ed, I do appreciate you coming on today, and sharing what I feel is going to be very impactful for a lot of our listeners, that can hopefully help in many ways. And that's really what our show is all about, is really just bringing value in so many different ways that we feel these are subjects that can make an impact. So thank you and welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Renee.
So if you don't mind, just kind of start off with, sure. You and I have been friends for several years. You've been very successful in construction of truck stops. You have a very diverse background. Kind of just share with us a little bit about your background, different things that you went through, and maybe somewhere of where some of this started is maybe gives a whole reflection for some people, maybe, right?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, my studio today is a 28-day inpatient rehabilitation center. Wow. So I checked myself in, I think around January the 13th on my own. I walked in. I knew from past experience that I needed to go to an intermediate spot because I drank, right? And I had alcohol in my system. So, I have a really good sponsor in AA, and we're very honest with each other. So I called him, he showed up, he picked me up with another guy from my group, and we all kind of knew it needed to happen from that point moving forward.
Right.
So that was a really quick set of events, right? That you're not planning for. Okay. Right. But when you call in the cavalry's going to show up, and the cavalry's going to take you where the cavalry takes you. So I didn't fight that. So I went to a real spot where I did a couple of day detox, because I really wasn't that bad, but I had drank and it was causing a problem. I realized it. So my detox was pretty quick. Really wasn't like a medical detox. It was just kind of sobering up, for lack of a better term. And from there, I went to a 28-day, which I'm in currently. I'm in a 28-day program. As I said, I've been in since January the 13th. And it's a very uncomfortable process. You're kind of immediately, as you well know, I went from being very accessible to being inaccessible.
Correct.
Inaccessible, excuse me. And so for somebody like myself, who wants to always be in contact and communicating and be part of a conversation, it's real hard. So that's that's a real hard part of this process, is to surrender yourself to other folks who take control of your day-to-day routine, and what you're going to eat, what you're going to do, what time you got to be here, and then your phone, everything. So that's a bit rough. And what I was sharing with you a moment ago, and I don't want to get into that subject right now, but because we can peel that back a little bit, right? But what I was sharing with you a little while ago, that really handcuffs your abilities to make decisions on kind of where you want to go on your treatment, because you don't have your cell phone, you're calling people, they don't recognize your number. And so many people, man, they don't see a number they recognize, they're letting it go to voicemail because of spam calls, all these different things, robocalls. So it creates a lot of stress and anxiety because you cannot use your phone and you're trying to communicate or connect with your family or your friends. And with the exception of yourself, who answered, most people didn't answer when I called them from a number they didn't recognize. So that is a big part of this process, right? So it's surrendering. I am I am um, really, really disappointed right now in where I'm at. I'm not disappointed that I'm proud of myself that I called my sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost me a lot.
Well, let's start off with, tell us a bit where you would like your history. Let's start off with, really who you are, where you grew up at, how,
Sure.
the industry. Just kind of fast forward into,
Sure.
where you were. And you and I have been knowing each other. We're partners and two our businesses. I want people to really know that this is not, you're not common, right? But at the same time, so I want people to know where you think.
Right. So I grew up in the Ninth Ward in New Orleans. I went to University of New Orleans. I excelled in my sport, which was competitive marching band, drum and bugle corps. I probably won every award you can win in that sport. That's a very competitive sport. I got out of When I got out of drum corps, got into the business, got a great job, met my wife. We started a beautiful family. From there, I had a computer company that I merged in with another company. They sold that business, and then I really launched out and got into the video poker business and provided ancillary services like financing opportunities and constructing deals, right? Transactions.
Right.
I worked for the biggest route guys in the country, actually, and did mergers, acquisitions, finance pieces, location hunting, all the things that you do that are very valuable in that industry. In there, in a backwards kind of way, I got into the construction side because truck stops in Louisiana can have video poker, 50 machines. So it was a very valuable location. So I learned by watching and listening and working with different people that were general contractors, really what they were doing, because I was watching the project for the owner.
Right.
I was kind of project managing. I was the owner's eyes and ears on the ground, but I wasn't the GC.
Right.
So I merged. We did a qualifying member. I brought a guy in. We started a general contracting company. It got licensed in the state of Louisiana. And then I went on to build 27 truck stops in Louisiana with video poker, renovated 2 or 3, and did management deals on a bunch. Did merger and acquisition on a bunch. My economic impact on that industry is probably, 500 million. I don't think that's overstating anything.
Right.
Went to Chicago when Illinois opened, partnered up with some guys up that way. We started a company that was a boutique specialty finance company. We raised 150,000 on our first raise. Then we raised 1.2 million on our second lift. And then we got a credit facility for 200 million from a Wall Street group that did distressed paper. And because people considered it a risky proposition to lend poker people money, video poker people money, distressed paper guys had an appetite because it's kind of like C and D paper, right? Well, what you
Right.
can charge. So they like that. They had appetite for that interest rate and fees that they can put in there. And guys, banks weren't lending to operators that were new, even though they were established guys in the industry. They were new to the gaming industry. They were coin
Okay.
operators, pinball, jukebox, those kind of guys, right? So we started that company. We were a little early in the market, but we were industry leader. We probably were more well known than anybody. We started, as I've told you before, podcasting back then, where we were delivering messages via a video sales letter, a VSL, right? Through Constant Contact. And so we really did a great job. I came back to New Orleans because I was really kind of tired of being away from home, made it
Right.
back. And that's shortly before we met, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And, started really kind of getting back into the truck stop industry and the services advisory industry in the gaming space once I got back in New Orleans. Had a really great position, and this is where a lot of this drinking started, right? So you're drinking the whole time in gaming, you go on to shows, drinking and smoking, especially in the construction industry, is the norm. A lot of
Right.
guys smoking, and so
That's how deals are made in the
you know,
bars, right?
yeah, you drinking, you smoking, it's back in a napkin, it's handshake kind of business. So, I was drinking all the time. But I, like, I would stop at the end of the night and go to bed. I didn't wake up the next morning, you know, going to the bar and getting a drink.
Right.
That didn't even cross my mind.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I didn't feel good, but I didn't have the shakes or the DTs, as it's called, delirium and tremors, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any of that going on. But the best way to cure hangovers is start over kind of comment, right? And I used to hear it because somebody told me that slogan one time, and I just kind of was like, okay, well, maybe I'll go get a drink and get myself steady. Um, and the folks that I worked for 7 years after I got back into New Orleans, a couple of years after I got back, I got a gig with a group out of in Louisiana, a
Uh-huh.
family business, and they didn't care if I drank. Like, they drank. It was
Right.
part of the culture, right? And I worked mainly remote for a big part of that, especially when COVID hit. And so, like, nobody was keeping track or keeping score of what I was doing when I was working remote. Um, and I think that's when I really started having an issue where it was becoming a part of my day to day life. Like, I was day drinking,
Right. Right.
which I had never done. And I remember I went to the hospital because I had a procedure and I had to go there. I said, you can't drink the day before. So I didn't. And I got there the next morning to get prepped for surgery. And man, I was detoxing. I didn't know I was detoxing, but the nurse came in to prep me and saw my condition and said, I think you're detoxing. And it's the first time I heard that, and the first time I heard alcoholic connected to my name.
Hmm.
Like, I knew I had a drinking problem. I knew I liked drinking. I love drinking. But I never heard anybody kind of put that next to my name.
Right.
And it was shocking. Um, so but I continued on. I continued forward, kept working for those guys. I was married at the time, my second marriage, and um, it really wasn't a good relationship from jump, but it was a relationship of convenience. But I was drinking through that marriage, and I was given sort of an ultimatum, but the person that gave it to me just wasn't the right. I didn't want to hear it at the time. I
Right.
didn't care. Drinking was more important to me than that person.
Mm-hmm.
That's harsh to say,
What,
but
so
very
what were
true.
you drinking? Like when you say drinking, were you drinking vodka, Jack Daniels, or whiskey?
Man, my girlfriend was vodka, but my sexy date was vodka, but my day-to-day girlfriend was wine, believe it or
Okay.
not. And I kept Mark West
And
in
how
the
much would you
business.
consume on a day, on average?
There were days I drank 4 bottles of wine.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
And especially if you got somebody like, a part of the story that's current, right? So we don't need to use names, but there's been somebody in my life of recent that was part of my life back then for a period of time, and that person drank. So drinking was our story.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't drink 4 bottles of wine every day, but there were days I would drink 4 bottles of wine.
So basically, that was just a habit. It becomes a habit, I guess, just like smoking, or if you're hanging around with somebody else. So you basically just had this ongoing habit for years. You're drinking, you're not really associating yourself as a alcoholic or that you have a problem. So when did
Right.
it start really becoming more of a challenge, with whether it's with relationships or work, I guess? Is that
Yeah.
when it started
Um,
affecting?
yeah. Yeah. So I was given an ultimatum by a woman I was married to shortly, my second wife, and I it just didn't work, so I left, and I went to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and rented an Airbnb for 2 months while I kind of decided where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. The guys that I was working for, they didn't care, like they didn't care that I was over there, and so
Mhm.
that's when it hit. That's when I missed a very important meeting that I was supposed to show up for. And it was because I really couldn't make it because I was hanging out with somebody and I had been drinking, and I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And that was that's when the bomb fell, because, now I'm disconnected from my support group, the guys that looked the other way. And so now I'm kind of floating out there in space, and I began to drink heavily, and I ended up, um, with the help of a friend, because I wasn't in any program at this time. I ended up
Okay.
at a rehab center, which I went through my first actual medical detox, and then did 28 days. And then after I came out of there, I was totally involved with AA, did 90 meetings in 90 days, as I was told to do.
Mhm.
Did 3 to 4 meetings a week, had a great, strong home group. I got 3 years of sobriety under me.
Okay.
Uh, that's a long time. Uh, so, when I say I'm, I'm, I'm disappointed, I'm not disappointed that I called my sponsor. I'm not disappointed that I'm sitting here right now. I'm disappointed that I gave up my sobriety for the stupid reasons that I did. But those are to be vetted out as to really what kind of caused that, right?
Mhm.
Um, Resentment is a big factor why people relapse, Renee. Uh, you know, and I did I worked with my sponsor, but I never really did what's called step 4. And step 4, for anybody that's watches this, and that's in AA, has ever attended any kind of AA function or has done any AA work, step 4 is really kind of when you lay it out there. It's difficult,
Okay.
man. It's like, you're really putting it on the line. You're saying, what is my resentment? Who am I resentful? What is my resentment, or who am I resentful of?
Right.
What caused that resentment? How did that affect me and my recovery or my relapse? And what was the role I played in it? Because honesty is very important. So I didn't do that. I felt I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to talk about I didn't want to write down things about myself because I was afraid to, and then share it with another person because they might judge me. What I failed to understand is that people that are in that situation in AA and a sponsor or other member, man, they've done all the same things you've done or more. Right? So there's nothing I'm going to say to them that's going to shock them. I just didn't do it. And, you know, I think it's a big reason why I relapsed, because I didn't do all the work I was supposed to be doing. And of course, as you know, I moved from a different part of the city to another part of the city. And to get to my meetings was a difficult task because of traffic and distance, and there was no proximity. And I stopped going to my meetings on a regular basis, and I got really disconnected from my AA grounding. And ultimately, that's going to take toll.
So let's just share a little bit of concept. I mean, so you and I have been knowing each other for, I think, almost 14 years, somewhere around that number.
Yep.
Right? And so we go back from, when I was doing business brokering. I met you through a friend of ours, I think Danny Pfister.
Yep.
I think I was in the process of selling either a bar or some video poker routes, and that's how you and I connected. So
Yep.
you and I have been friends for several years. I did not know, I wasn't aware of any issues, drinking, things of that nature. I think we went out a couple of times, had drinks, but I never really thought about it.
Yeah.
And so over the course of the last few years, I think you and I, we partnered up on EV charging stations because I came across that concept. I came to you first because I knew that you had this experience in building truck stops across the states. And so I said, well, let me talk to Ed because he knows this better than anybody else. And my experience with you is just, you're an incredible, you just know a lot, right? And so you and I and our other two partners, we had weekly phone calls, and me and Ed, we talk on a daily basis.
Yep.
All of a sudden, I think that this was back approximately about a year ago. Was this about a year, or was this 6 months ago?
6 months ago.
About 6 months.
First
so this
crash.
is where it was, so again, I lost my brother at 61. So this year makes it about a year and a half. And, he was 61. He used to be, a business owner. He lost his business back in, right around the 2010 time. He's always been working in the cell phone industry, doing kind of, he's very similar to you. And I never knew, we always knew that he had drinks, occasionally, but I never thought about it. But I think over the last few years, between work, marriage, depression, all kind of different things started hitting. This is when I was first exposed to really the reality of not really knowing how to help somebody. And we would have these conversations like, Mike, what are you doing? We were partners in an insurance business, and I would call him up and he was just like in la la land. I would go over to the house and he's just laying around the house, pretty much incoherent. So I was like, are you on drugs? And still to this day, I don't know what he was taking. We did realize after a while that he was on, drinking these small little wine bottles. But over a period of time, it just took him to where he ran into a couple of accidents. Police took him to the jail. That's when he didn't recover, coming out with a little bit of some type of I guess when you go into some kind of infection. So that infection led to him really going downhill because he had that liver issue. But instead of stopping the drinking and stopping whatever little Percocets or pills or whatever because of the pain, he was always in pain, always griping about different things. So that's when I was first exposed. I lost my brother basically because we just couldn't save him, and it was just really attacked his liver. So here it is, you and I are, we've been partners for a while, and then one week I couldn't get in touch with you. None of us have heard from you. And so I decided one night on a Friday to just go to where you were staying. And when I walked into that room, it hit me that you looked like my brother, right?
Yeah.
So you and I both know that, at that time, you went, because you disconnected, I think, from some of the people. You fell into this type of, whether it's depression, loneliness. That's where I found you, that you almost tried to commit suicide, correct?
Yep. Yep.
And you were
Yep.
basically just drinking yourself to death. And you told me that you just wanted to die
Yeah.
and leave you alone, right? And I walked out of that room, and it was right around 10 o'clock at night. And I was just like, no, I can't leave them. So that's when I called the police, and that we admitted. And so that little process for me exposed me to not only what I've seen with my brother, but then also another personal friend. And just over the last few years, I've been getting more and more exposed to this issue, this addiction, this. And so from there, you recovered, and it seemed like you were doing fine. But what happened that you think it keeps on, like it came back again?
Well, okay. So, when alcoholics drink, one of the things they do is isolate.
Okay.
They don't want to be bothered because they just want to stay drunk. So what disconnecting is not something that I did that was abnormal. That is a normal step in the process of going straight downhill, right? Because I had already been down that path and understood where it brought me last time and had 3 years of sobriety under me, I didn't want to have to go through it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what the consequences were going to be. So I gave up. And I knew enough about the disease or the effects of alcohol in your body and the things it could do to you, because I had been educated through going, to rehab and going to AA and blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't like I was naive. I knew what to do. And I decided that I just didn't want to have to fight back, that I didn't know if I had it in me, and that I had left a lot of people down. And I was ashamed and I was embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens to a lot of people who have relapses, because unless you are an addict or an alcoholic and you relapse, or you ever had to face that or understand what's going on in your head or the pain you feel, and all these different things, it's very difficult for people to just take it away like, relapse, he's, blah, blah, blah. Like it's a medical process, right? They've seen it's weakness, or something's wrong with that guy. He's mentally ill. Something of that effect. So I just didn't want to be seen that way. And nor did I just didn't, I don't know, I just given up. It's a normal instinct. I think a lot of people get there. It's a very dark place. And you bailed my ass out. You saved me. And yeah, I did go to a spot for like 7 days, a detox sort of situation, which was terrible. And then because of my conduct, the place that I was living, that was no longer offered to me. And so I went and asked, I had a friend, and I said, hey, can I stay with you? And her response was sure. And so I went that direction. And she's a day drink. She drinks every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first day that I was there, being mindful of the fact that I had just gone through this, and now I was, trying to get back on my sober train, she didn't drink.
Right.
But what I realized a couple of days moving forward is that she was getting edgier and edgier every day. Right. And finally, I just begged her to drink because I couldn't take her edginess any longer. And the truth of it is, I knew she was drinking because I could smell it on her, because she's a nurse. She would leave the hospital, which is dangerous. She'd stop at a convenience store, get a solo, a Coke or a Dr. Pepper, whatever, and then a pint or whatever she was buying, and pour it in there, and driving home, drinking alcohol in her truck.
Wow.
So this is all stacking up on me. And, so then, as you know, well, you don't know, but she bought a home. I went with her to the new house.
Right.
And I was going to help her and work on it. But I realized that she just seemed to be getting meaner and meaner and madder and madder. I didn't understand what that was going on with that. So and I was getting weak. I was getting weak in the sense that I knew that ultimately I was going to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Let me ask you this. So, here's where, you and I, again, we have been, partners with the EV charging station, and you've been knowing I've been doing like podcasts and things of that nature, but I really we're never really connected really on that. But I think at this point, when you came out, I think that's when you started getting more interested in what I'm doing, because you started working with me, because I told you I needed help with some things, and I saw. So do you feel that the transformation sometimes of when you started kind of focusing on even yourself and your story, did you start seeing how your story can help others?
oh yeah,
And that did that help you through curving that need or feeling of needing to drink? Did you feel that? Did it help you?
Yeah. So, I don't want to get to that. But what I want to say is this: where I sit today is not a sexy story, right? So, my roommate's drinking. I'm kind of sneaking some whiskey out of her bottle, taking some sips, right, to try to not to kind of get in the groove or get in the same kind of vibe with her. Stupid move, right? Stupid move, but it happens. I went to a restaurant to pick up some food. They had a bar. Hey, you want a drink? Yep, I'll have a drink. Right. I'm thinking, because I'm sipping the whiskey and I'm maintaining that, now I can go to a bar and go have a cocktail and maintain.
Mm.
See how it starts getting you? this
Right.
monster, right? Okay. Yep. Okay. Hey, I'll have a double. Okay, cool. I'll have a double. Right. That's when the wheels came off the wagon.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a couple of days involved in there where I was drinking, but I immediately knew I was in trouble. Immediately knew, right? And I fell, as you know, and the cops showed up and that whole mess. Um, n- None of that should have ever happened, but it did. So relapse is a big part of people's recovery story, because relapse teaches you that you can relapse, right?
What's the old saying that you're one is too many, 100 is not enough, or 1,000 is not enough? Is that a saying?
Maybe, they have, I don't know, but I could
Okay.
tell you, like, I'm so aware of it now. I Like I told you, my sexy date is a cranberry vodka, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
a double vodka with a splash cran. I could tell you, I've ordered it hundreds of times. Um,
Right.
they have cranberry juice in here, and I will not drink it.
Mm.
It's a mental trigger. It sounds stupid, but that's how we be disciplined. Back to the podcasting, because I know we're running a little long here. Yes, I saw this as an opportunity for me, because I really feel like this is a platform or a venue that I can do, that I really feel that between you and I and the things we've discussed, we can really bring something special to this sort of media. So, two things I wanted to focus on. One is called rebound, right? Reboot, excuse me, reboot. The second is thanks for the business. And it's interesting that reboot was going to talk about my reboot from that episode where you came to my apartment, but it was going to be more about rebooting out of my first recovery as well, where I had 3 years of sobriety, right?
Okay.
So now reboot's a real story.
Mm.
Reboot's a real story now, because because now I've gone through a lot of different steps that a lot of people have and a lot of things that destroy their lives. So now I want to talk about the reboot and focus on that and make that an ongoing conversation with other people that are in the reboot process. I'm in a good chemistry lab because there's a wide variety of people in here, all have stories. So as I told you the other day, my desire and goal now is to document these stories.
Right.
Then, because they want to tell their stories, because they write a goodbye letter to their drug or whatever their addiction is. In this process, we're going to write a goodbye letter to that. My goodbye letter to alcohol, their goodbye letter to heroin, their goodbye letter to crack, right?
Right.
And that's a very personal goodbye letter.
Can you say where you are currently? I mean, it's like it's packed, and these locations around here. You were saying earlier that
full.
You're all full. You can't even get in certain locations.
You probably like this spot right now, which is again a very blue collar spot because it's where I had to come, but I'm safe, right? And I'm sober. I spent my birthday in here sober. Yes, they're full. These folks would probably be a tad selective on who they would let in here now. Gotcha. Because you may have the beds, Renee, but you don't have the staff. So, right. You know what I'm saying? So there's not enough nurses. There's not enough techs, the people that work on the floor. And at some point, they can only handle so many clients, as they call it, but patients, really, right? Right. And I see so many deficiencies in these programs because, like today, you know, because of the weather, the snow in New Orleans, there's just all filler time, right? Like you're just filling days, which are wasted because this is a very critical period when you're in from my other successful rehab, right? I mean, I came out of that spot and did 3 years sober. So, man, that was an awesome 29 days that I spent in there, or 30 days. So there's a lot of work to be done in this field, but the people that are in here, a majority of them, while they're here, genuinely have a desire to get sober and stay sober. And they have stories to tell. And that story is to share. But there's another side of it, which looks like, you know, this is where I was, this is what happened, this is how I got here, and this is where I'm going. And let's kind of keep tabs on where they're going. Because other people are going to watch that are in this situation where I am in today and not understand that they can get 100 miles down the road. They don't see that, right? They just kind of sit, you know, staring at the wall, man. So yeah, I'm very excited about documenting this and talking about this because it needs to be discussed. And you know, in every AA meeting, you pray, and before you say the Serenity Prayer, you offer it to the silent and suffering alcoholics still out there, because they're silent and they're suffering, because they're shamed into silence sometimes as well, you know. And so it takes a lot for somebody to come out and say, "I'm an alcoholic." Wow. I'm not. I'm, and I think that part of this needs to the I statements. I'm not comfortable with I statements now. I'm learning some stuff that I didn't think about before, that talked to me by a very smart counselor in here. Right. And she's not an I statement person, because what you say I am, you are. Right? Mm-hmm. Versus, hey, you know, I'm Ed. My friends call me Manny. That's all you need to know. I'm not going to, you're right. I mean, my calling card is going to be, hey, I'm Manny, I'm an alcoholic. Why do you need to know that? Right? Mm-hmm. If I'm going to share a personal story with someone, of course, will admit that to anybody, as you well know I do.
Right.
So I don't know about these I statements anymore. I think that I don't know that they're helpful. They may be harmful. That's to be determined. And the other thing that we got very interested in was, I'm a sales guy. I like closing sales. I have something to teach. So I was working on developing a course called Thanks for the Business. And we were going to work on a Tuesday at 7:00 community meeting where we would start engaging people on a platform. And so, I dropped the ball on a lot of shit. And I heard it in your voice the first time I talked to you. And so I know we have a lot of great things to do together. There's a lot of things that I know we can grow Southern Cutters, your business. I'm very excited about that. I was doing a lot of stuff day to day with the book side, money side. But as you well know, I would tell you, I just want to talk about Southern Cutters. Right? Nope. Because I see such a huge opportunity in that company. Because the equipment's there, the business is there, there's a base, there's a foundation, there's guys working, there's a manager, there's all that shit is already there.
Right.
And that excites me as someone who likes to grow businesses. But this medium excites me because I think we're going to hit something that ultimately is going to go viral. I think as you say, we're close, right? We're one good conversation away and one good thumbnail or one good title, and somebody's going to hear it and they're going to share it. And this is a subject that is tremendously affecting our country and is a big problem and is ripping families apart. And I just want to be part of telling that story.
No, I think this is, we're going to consider this part one of our conversation on this, and we're going to create additional series. And I think each series is going to kind of focus maybe on some different things, really the struggles, why people are in it, and then figuring out different things or triggers that can help people get out of it is what I'm really looking forward to. So I appreciate you being open. I appreciate you being honest and with yourself and with me, with just the communities of people who are watching this. And we're hoping that this gives someone an opportunity where you can join our community and share your stories as we're continuing this, because I do feel that what your passion in our community is not just about business, but it is all about really helping people in different areas of their lives to get through. So I do appreciate you coming on today, Ed, and I'm looking forward to part two. So stay tuned to part two of this series.
And Renee, if anybody, in conclusion of part one, before you can get to part two, if anybody's out there suffering, and if you're currently in a 12-step program, call your sponsor. And if you're not in a 12-step program, go to rehab, go to recovery if you can. But, talk about it, because if not, because nobody wants to read about it, called an obituary. So talk about it before we read about it.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate it, brother. We're going to sign off on this one and look forward to part two.
Okay, brother.
Thank you.